Yoga as we know it in practicing in yoga studio culture in the West, in its most basic form, is practicing posture. Like if you had to describe yoga to your grandma who's never even heard of it before, right? You probably wouldn't start with presence and breath and all this other fancy stuff. You would just say, hey, grandma, you make shapes, right? Yoga is posture at its most base level. And practicing posture is orienting ourselves. It is physically orienting ourselves in space. And orienting is something that our nervous system is always doing. We orient to our purpose whenever we go into a situation. We might orient to our task list when we go into the day. We orient to ourselves oftentimes when we're feeling a little off or confused. But we're always orienting whether we know it or not. We're especially always physically orienting. Most of us tend to work at desks all day, right? So we're probably not conscious because we're focused on what's going on in the screen, but we're still physically orienting, often like so. We're orienting when we look at our phones. We're constantly orienting throughout the day. Most of us tend to also be sedentary, so we're orienting a way that there's not a lot of movement, and or have repetitive movement through the day, depending on what sort of work that we do. And there's always a consequence to this unconscious orienting, right? Things like shoulder and neck strain, tension headaches, lymph and blood not being able to flow fully, in having imbalance in the structure. And it's like if you leave a piece of wood in some kind of a bent position, you probably have done this if you had a house, in that position over time, that piece of wood will warp, right? You have this warped kind of curved piece of wood because the tissues in the wood, which is mainly the cellulose, will become fixated in the position if you leave it that way over time. Now, our body is no different. In our body, we're not cellulose. It's mostly the collagen fibers that are like the cellulose in the wood. That if we get in a position over time, it tends to warp the tissues, which brings about these problems like tension headaches, neck strain, and so on. So there's always impact, right? We're no different than the piece of wood in a lot of ways, other than it's cellulose, we're collagen. And so if you've ever, so the question becomes, how do we unwarp, right? How do we get out of this imbalance? Well, if you've ever had one of these pieces of wood, you may have tried to just bring the wood straight. And what you'll notice is that never works, because as much as you might try to take it straight, the fact is that it has become warped at the cellulose level. And similarly, it might be helpful for us to take a cue from how we might unwarp that wood, which is when we unwarp the wood, you got to bend it in the opposite direction, at least for a bit of time, to help the cellulose balance out, to help bring it back into its more aligned state. And so if you've been through the yoga training, we call this the bent stick principle, which is we have these fibers in our body to get the structure to come more into balance. Sometimes temporarily, we have to go in the opposite direction. And so if unconscious orienting, right, at my desk is impacting life for the negative because of a warped structure, then for yoga to undo this, what we need to do is conscious counter-orienting. And this forms a lot of what I would call the 21st century yoga on the mat vocabulary, which is like, if most of us spend our time in the 21st century driving, typing, right, getting a certain kind of warp. It's helpful to have a vocabulary. So you notice we do cactus a lot. What's cactus? Well, cactus is just simply anti-slump pose, right? It's slumping is shoulders down and forward, collapse the chest. Cactus is shoulders back, open the chest, lift the sternum bone. Same thing for when we go into cactus to kind of get rid of this, right? Looking down at the machines or whatever. That neck tends to come down and forward. So in cactus, we not only shoulders back, lift the sternum bone, but take the neck back and lift the chin a little bit. And if you're not sure what that feels like, what you can do is just try to give yourself a double chin. That'll take your neck back, and then lift your chin so you're open in your throat. And that's our basic cactus. That is our how we consciously counter orient to help the collagen tissues that are like those cellulose tissues in the wood. So bent stick principle is we start to temporarily, as part of our practice, bend in the opposite direction so that we can come back to a place of home, of neutral, of more of our natural selves. And obviously in yoga, we like to do this in mind, but it all starts in body. So if most of us tend to be sedentary all day in yoga, we're going to move. If we tend to do repetitive motions all day, well, it depends on the repetitive motion that we might do to balance the structure. But if most of us are seated a lot of the day, even if we don't sit at our jobs, a lot of times we're in cars, helpful to stretch the hips. Helpful to do things that have arm support. This will make up our vocabulary through the next few weeks. So I would like to start today with one of these very basic vocabularies, which is cactus pose. And so if you would please come on to a seat, and in seated, bring both arms up into the cactus shape, where you can draw your shoulders back, make space through your chest, and do so with energy, lifting your sternum bone up. So you're getting the opposite effect of what would happen if you're sitting at a desk. And now take a deep inhale, keep inhaling. On your exhale, relax both arms down. And just take a pause, just check it out. Feel what you got from that. And we're going to do a couple more rounds of cactus. So bringing both arms up again into cactus position. Spread your fingers, draw your shoulders back. And as you lift your sternum bone up, be sure to take your neck back, lift your chin up a bit. So you can have the opposite of desk asana. A solid piece of wood cannot help if it has been sitting at a desk all day, but to have its tissues be imbalanced. And that stick has been a bent one in everyday life. Now we counter it. Take a deep inhale. On your exhale, relax both arms down. And take a pause. Notice, is there anything that you sense while sitting that's different after applying this counter force? We're going to do this one more time, short. Taking both arms up again. Spread your fingers, draw back your shoulders, and give your sternum bone ever so slight of a lift. Take your chin back by giving yourself a double chin, and then lift your chin up so there's space in your throat. So you take your neck back. That's it. Now one more full inhale. And on your exhale, relax both arms down. Bring yourself to pause. Notice what you notice. And one of the things that you might notice is a little bit of a sense of being out of your body's habitual routine, where the nervous system's a little confused. So feel welcome to shake out your shoulders to give it like a little bit of movement. Shake your shoulders around, move it around. All right, we'll do lots of this. This is neutralizing. Many times when we start to shift the body's tissues out of their habitual routine, we need to help our nervous system figure out what we just did. Now, if you've been practicing steadily for a couple of years or more, you might not need to do this anymore, but it's always helpful to check. And now settle into your seat. And notice having countered desk asana, conscious countering. Does the new lay of tissue allow you to sit more fully, more integrated from your body to the floor? So that the tissue in your upper body inhabits all the way down to your seat, an integrated seat. Taking a breath to center as we begin today's practice. Take a full inhale all the way in, exhaling all the air out. Begin to gently bring yourself up to a low lunge with your right leg forward, your left leg back with your left knee down on the floor. Now, if you need to pad your left knee, feel welcome to put a blanket down. Feel welcome to place whatever it is that you need to have a comfortable posture, a comfortable way of orienting in space. And with your next inhale, begin to bring yourself on up in the lunge. Breathing in, start with a full inhale. And on your exhale, bring both arms into cactus. As you draw back your shoulders and lift your sternum bone, take one more inhale. And on your exhale, gently bring both hands down to the floor. However you like to do it, switch sides. Left leg forward, right leg back. Once again, feel welcome to pad your knee. So we're always setting ourselves up for relative comfort in the pose. And then with your next inhale, begin to lift up into the lunge. Feeling your breath. So we orient to our bodies in space. We orient to breath. Start with a full inhale. On your exhale, bring both arms into cactus. Shoulders draw back, your sternum bone up. Breathing with intention, almost like a regular part of the rhythm section. Your breath is the rhythm section of your practice. Take one more inhale all the way in. And on your exhale, gently relax on down to the floor. And make your way towards standing, coming on up to the top. And you want to notice after each stretch, if your body feels a little off or not quite itself, this is often your body telling you that it hasn't integrated the stretch because it's forgotten where neutral is. And so It is helpful sometimes to shake your legs out a little bit, shake your body out a little bit. This always helps your nervous system reintegrate whatever it was just doing. And now take your time. And once you are done reintegrating, once you're done shaking it out, come to standing near the top of your mat. And with your arms at your sides, use your next inhale to float both arms up overhead. Bring your palms together, and on your exhale, come right back down through heart center. On your inhale, float both arms up overhead. On your exhale, float both hands down through heart center. One more time. With your next inhale, float both arms up overhead. Take a full breath. If you want to join me, you can hear Om. Om. After your next exhale, use your inhale to float both arms up overhead. And then on your exhale, we're going to come into a forward bend. Be mindful of, if you have lower back issues, bend your knees and walk your hands down your legs first. Coming into the forward bend position. Just easy on your legs. Use your next inhale to step back with your left foot, coming into a fingertip lunge. And so fingertip lunge is where your back knee is off the ground and you have a lightness to your fingertips with your core strength. Use your next inhale to rise on up into crescent lunge. Counter-orienting consciously. Breathe. Give your pose a little energy with steady, full breaths. And from your next inhale, use your exhale to take both hands down to the floor. Coming to the fingertip position, switch legs, step your right foot back, left leg forward, crescent lunge. From fingertip lunge position, use your next inhale to rise up into crescent lunge. Using the drum beat, the rhythm section of your breath to steady, to energize the pose. You can also energize the pose by spreading your fingers and toes, isometrically pulling your right foot forward to give it a little energy. Breathe in. And on your next exhale, bring both hands down to the floor. Step your right foot forward to come to the top of your mat. Full breath. Exhale, gentle, working through the backs of your legs. And on your next inhale, rise on up to standing. Filling up your lungs all the way as you reach up to the top. Meet your hands together. On your exhale, come down through heart center. Coming to standing. Taking pause, noticing where your body is after the conscious counter-orienting. If anything is off, feel welcome to shake it out through your legs, through your shoulders. Sometimes to come back home, you have to neutralize. You have to go through neutral first. And then from neutral, use your next inhale to float both arms up. This time, grab a hold of your right wrist with your left hand and take a side stretch over to your left, starting to open up your right side body. So you're beginning to make space here in the crescent moon pose. Breathing fully. And so you're counter orienting. You don't want to leave any little grain of the wood out. And so notice where the stretch is in your right side body, where there might be little grains of the wood that may have been missed. Take another inhale. And with your exhale, come on back to center. Switching sides, grab a hold of your left wrist with your right hand. And then take your side stretch over to your right, opening up your left side body. Our body is filled with collagen, just like wood is filled with the cellulose, and that is ultimately what holds the warp. And so you want to notice, are you getting into all those strands, all those places that might be holding the warp? It is this conscious counter-orienting that can help us come back home. From your next inhale, use your exhale to come back to center, relaxing both arms to your sides. We'll come into Samasthiti, which is just standing relaxed, standing tall. And noticing after the bends, did they allow you to stand more fully in yourself? More open. We're going to take that whole series again. After your next exhale, use your inhale to float both arms up. In your exhale, come into your forward bend. If you have a touchy low back, bend at your knees, walk your hands down your thighs as you come down. Mindful of how you're opening up the backs of your legs, how you're warming them up. Use your next inhale to step back with your right foot, coming into a fingertip lunge. And now charging up your breath, use your next inhale to rise up in crescent lunge. On your next full inhale, fill up your lungs. Use your exhale to bring both arms into cactus. Sternum bone lifts up just a little bit. And neck back. The way you know your neck is going back is it's like the action of your neck if you're giving yourself a double chin. But then we want to lift the chin at the end. So the whole neck is back. And there's openness in how we counter orient. Starting from a full inhale, on your exhale, bring both hands back down to the floor. And either switch sides, or if you need to shake something out to neutralize, go ahead and shake that out first. Then switch so that you have your right leg forward and your left leg back. From fingertip lunge, use your next breath to rise up into crescent lunge. Using your breath, and so we orient to breath as well as position. Use your next inhale to fill up all the way, your exhale to come to cactus arms. With a lift of your sternum bone, a lift of your chin, your neck back. Steady your breath, even in the energy and the intensity of the pose. Your breath is the rhythm section that integrates the whole band together. From your next inhale, use your exhale to bring both hands back down to the floor. Step your left foot forward and either bending at your hips or walking your hands up your thighs with bent knees. Bring yourself on up into standing, where you're welcome to neutralize, to shake out anything that feels disintegrated. If there's nothing that feels disintegrated, you can simply pause in Samasthiti. And feeling your breath in and out. The next time your lungs empty, use your next inhale to float both arms up overhead, palms coming together, and then bringing your hands down through your midline. 2 more cycles. Use your inhale to let both arms rise. Your exhale, hands follow through your midline, tracing down, passing heart center. And one more time. Inhale to float both arms up, returning both hands to heart center. And with your next inhale, floating both arms up overhead, grab a hold of your right wrist with your left hand and take a side bend over to your left, beginning to open up your right side body. All along from your armpit down to your waist on your right side, you're working through the tissues, through all of those grains, working through the proverbial cellulose, the tissues that not only tend to hold the warp, but they also hold our coming back home. Working through all these collagen fibers. Take one more inhale. And on your exhale, return back to center. Pausing. Grab a hold of your left wrist with your right hand and begin to take your side bend over to your right, opening up your left side body. Every bit of tissue that you can feel by making your length. We humans are complicated. We're more than just one bent piece of wood, right? In reality, it's like all these kinds of bent pieces of wood. It's not bad, but if we can unwarp them, it really adds up to more than the sum of the parts. And so you open up the little spaces that can. One more breath. And on your exhale, come on back to center. Relax both arms down, coming down to Samasthiti. If you do feel that disconnection in your nervous system, honor it by moving your body around to re-neutralize. If you do not need to re-neutralize, you can just pause in Samasthiti. Take a moment to come back to the lay of your tissues, how your tissues now lay after the stretches. Notice if there is a bit of a return to your natural tissues. It's almost kind of a coming back home. Now, of course, we cannot obsess with the warp in one area of the body, like the spine. But if you sit all day, the hamstrings are consistently locked short too. So we're going to come into our forward bend next. With your next inhale, bring both arms up overhead. Again, if you have trouble in your low back, walk your hands down your thighs with bent knees as you come into forward bend, setting up for the stretch. The goal here is to maximize the stretch in the backs of your legs and the hamstrings. You will likely get some stretch in your low back as well. But we want to maximize the stretch in legs. And so if there are adjustments that you make that make the stretch more in your legs, even if it's less in your low back, make those adjustments. And steady your breath like the rhythm section. Your steady breath will help the unwarp, the return. Six more breaths in this posture. Right? Each new posture by itself is barely noticeable in how it rebalances the tough cellulose wood-like structure of our body and mind. but each pose is like erosion. It's like a single brush of water across the rocks. It seems to do nothing. But over time, with consistency, with the steadiness of your breath, it carves canyons. So if we can be patient with the process of yoga, we too can make grand changes by little bits at a time. Using one more inhale in this pose. On your exhale, either come to standing or to the floor, whichever is more comfortable for you. And after a long stretch like that, you may find it necessary to neutralize again. Give yourself a little shake, a little wiggle. All right, so everything can orient back to place. Everything can orient back to home where it needs to be. And either from your standing position or from your position on the ground, we're going to come back to a fingertip lunge with the left leg forward, right leg back. And then from here, use your next inhale to rise on up into crescent lunge. Use your inhale to get long in your spine and your exhale to bring both hands to heart center. Again, use your inhale to float both arms up overhead in crescent lunge. Your exhale to bring your hands to heart center. And continue your spine length as you project forward in your lunge, lining up your spine with your back leg. Hands still at heart center. And then turn on the axis of your spine, coming into a crescent lunge twist. And don't just create length with the spine and stop there. Use the length of your spine. So when you restore a part of your body, don't stop. Inhabit it so that you can root and rise. So you can send the length through the entirety of your body in this crescent twist. Take one more inhale. Great work. And on your exhale, gently untwist, bringing yourself back to center and step forward or back, come back to neutral. Feel welcome to shake out in your legs, your hips, your back. And if you've been practicing yoga a lot, you might not need the shaking part, but it's helpful to take a moment of stillness in between to sense how things are starting to come back to a neutral bit by bit. The little eroding of the water affects the entire canyon. Now we're going to come to the other side. So coming into first a lunge with your right leg forward, left leg back. And crescent lunge. Using your breath with a full inhale, use your exhale to draw your hands back through heart center. So you're tracing your middle, inhale, arms up. Even as you may feel a little wobbly in the balance, you find something of center to work with as you bring your hands down to heart center. With your projected forward lunge, lining up your spine with your left leg, hands at heart center, turn on the axis of your spine, coming into a twist, into your crescent lunge twist. First, create the length of your spine, right? The length of your spine is that unwarping of the wood, and then use it. Inhabit your body with the length, sending it rooting through your back leg, sending it up through your chest and your chin, almost like a cactus type of feeling through your chest and throat as you root and rise. Take one more breath in the crescent twist. And then use your exhale to untwist, staying on axis. rise up to crescent lunge or come down to the floor and step forward to work your way back to standing, either shaking out, neutralizing, or taking a pause in samasthiti. The process often is not obvious from pose to pose. But if we practice this right, a lot of little things add up. And so from here, bring yourself down to a seat. Come on to seated on your mat, just as we began practice in seated. And notice has anything shifted? Comparing from where we began. Does the tissue lie differently? Does it connect differently from your upper body on down to inhabiting your seat? With one more breath here. We'll come into a Janusarasana position. And so bringing your right leg out straight, tuck your left foot in. So the sole of your left foot is in on your inner right thigh. Taking both arms up overhead on your next inhale. On your exhale, turn to your left, taking your right hand over toward your left knee. So you're in a twist. And so in yoga practice, we go in all of these different directions of orienting. Right? This helps us make sure that we get all of the warped pieces of wood, which I do not intend as an insult, but if you're a human being in the 21st century living, there's lots of warped wood that just gets in us every day. So with yoga, we shed the dead wood. Now with your next inhale, keep the twist, but begin to lift your left arm up in the air, opening up your left side body, almost like you're trying to arc your fingertips toward your right toes and opening up your side body. Feel for all of the various collagen tissues that you might open here in your side body. And taking another breath into your side. Use your exhale to come back to center and then untwist, turning your belly button to face your right toes and extend over your right leg into a stretch for the back of your right leg. Remember from earlier on in practice, the stretch in the back of your leg is much more important. And we actually would like to, in an advanced practice, almost take the stretch out of our back and put it in our leg. And so you can help that by putting a prop under your seat or bending your knee, lifting your heart. You can always play with the posture. So that you're getting into the intended collagen fibers. Fiber by fiber, we bring ourselves back. Fiber by fiber. We unwarp, come back into balance. 2 more breaths. And then with your next inhale, gently rise. Come on up to seated position. Feel welcome to bring both legs out and give them a little rotation, a little shake. You might want to do the same with your spine. I don't often through the course of the classes cue these neutralizing movements, but please feel welcome to use them even when I don't cue them. I'm cueing them a little heavy today just to emphasize this for the future. This is a very basic thing. You always want to make sure your nervous system feels the shift and integrates the shift and the change through each pose. So we're going to take this series on the other side. So you can take your left leg out to the side, tuck your sole of your right foot in. Use your inhale to bring both arms up overhead. And on your exhale, turn to your right into the twist. So begin to work through your spine on the other side. And twist in those places that are particularly a bit tense, particularly could use some unwinding of tension. One way you know that you're unwarping the tissues, that you're coming back into balance, coming back home, is that it feels good in an unwinding way. There is unwinding of the holding fibers. You're literally unwinding the grain of the inevitable imbalance of life. With your next inhale, lift your right arm up off the ground, coming into your side bend stretch. Think of your right side body and your arm like a half of a rainbow, and the other half of the rainbow just goes through the air to land at your left foot. And so you make this arc, this length, that you can breathe all 7 colors, or if you come from another culture, it might be 11 or 3, but breathe those colors into your right side body. And now use your next exhale to come back to the middle. Turn your belly button to face your left toes and extend over your left leg in your forward bend. There's nothing wrong with playing with the pose. Sometimes folks get the idea they need to be perfectly still in a pose. That gets cued sometimes to get out of fidgeting mode. And that's true in yoga. We do want to practice getting out of fidgeting, but there's a difference between fidgeting and experimenting so that you can unwind the grain of tension, which if you sit a lot all day is like really tensing your hamstrings. And so unwinding that grain of tension through your hamstrings, keeping the stretch out of your back. If you are making micro adjustments to help that, that is not fidgeting. This is conscious counter-orienting. And another way to say conscious counter-orienting with a steady rhythm section of breath is yoga. Taking another 2 breaths. Use your next inhale to gently rise. And then feel welcome to bring both legs out. You can take your hands behind or shake out, whatever you need. If you don't need that neutralizing movement, take it once in a while anyway. Sometimes you don't know that you need it. And sometimes the nervous system holds tension. Nervous system will always hold tension when it isn't sure what the heck just happened. Right? Anytime that you open up so much that it kind of has to remap itself. These little movements help your nervous system remap itself. Now we're going to shift into a little hip opening here. So we're going to come into Gomukasana, bringing your right leg into a bend so that your right knee faces forward, right heel near your left hip. And then you're going to stack your left leg over the top. Now, for some of you, this position is going to feel a little weird. Yeah, so I see people taking alternatives. That's good. You can always take an alternative like reclined pigeon. But if this pose is comfortable for you, go ahead and come from here, come into a forward bend position so that you can focus on the stretch being inside of your butt, which is to say there's all these hip rotator muscles that also from being seated all day tend to get very tense and very tight. So we're working the grain of these muscles out. And of course, step one is to tune in that you're unwinding the grain. That feels good in that unwinding way. That is the collagen fibers doing exactly what they're supposed to do. Add to that your steady breath. And you've got an excellent yoga practice. That's all you need. One more breath. And on your next inhale, gently rise. Feel welcome before going to the other side to take both legs out straight to shake things out. And part of restoring everything back to home base is making sure your muscles and your nervous system get into sync. Be sure to do that. And then switch sides. As you're ready, come into your forward bend position in Gomukasana, or your alternate pose. And you got two things you're focusing on, unless you're petting your dog, then you got three, but you got two things you're focusing on. How are the fibers unwinding? And the steady rhythm of your breath. Three more steady breaths. And then use your inhale to gently rise. Taking the option of just coming to the still seat or neutralizing, right? Making sure that your muscles and nervous system get into sync, get back home, so that your nervous system, in addition to your muscles, can land back in its most neutral place, like coming back home for your nervous system. Before we come into our final rest tonight, we're going to come into a restorative pose, a back bend and bound angle. So there is a few different ways you can do this. If you're using a towel, if you're using towels for props, you can roll up a towel the same way you would a yoga blanket. But you can take a yoga blanket, roll it up, place it in your upper back, right, for the back bend part. If you want something stronger of a bend in your back, you can always use a block. Blocks come in the 3 convenient settings. We have mild, medium, and spicy on the block. Just make sure your head and neck are supported. And once we get into the back bend, which one do you want? That one? Then we're also going to set up in bound angle. So unless you've practiced this a lot, you probably don't want an extreme back bend because we're doing 2 stretches at the same time in this pose. And in bound angle, it's a good idea to have blankets or blocks or something supporting your outer legs. The reason for this support is that you want to help your nervous system let go of tension. And if your nervous system can't let go of the tension, then the stretch isn't very useful. Now, obviously, you also don't want to have the support be so high that there's no stretch at all either. You'll have to find an in-between where you can rest into the blocks, rest into the props, while also having some kind of opening occur. All under the steady beat that is your breath. The rhythm section integrates the band. Your breath integrates the practice. Takes all these various unwarping to let them be more than the sum. And so with 10 more breaths, with each exhale, let something go. Let go of all the little fibers that have held life's imbalances with each exhale. Let go of those imbalances so that you may ingrain the life you want. Three more breaths. Letting go of whatever there is to let go of today. When making your way out of the pose, first, use your hands to close your legs in like closing a book. And then you can roll to one side or the other if you're fairly low in your back bend. If you're more extreme, you may have to use your elbows to give yourself a little push. Sometimes reintegrating your nervous system might look like taking a little more time on your side here, or just some gentle moving your shoulders around or hips around after the big stretching bends. Take any last little movements to help your body feel connected and together, so that you may settle into the final integration and make your way into final Shavasana. letting your body continue to rest. Take just a few more moments to sense, to feel the result of the practice. Of many, many waves that have eroded the tensions, that have put a slightly different groove into the fibers. Notice the ways that there is a coming back home. Or if you notice those ways now, you may possibly even increase them next time. With gentleness, begin to increase your breath or wiggle fingers and toes. So that nothing is jarring. Like the rhythm section of the band, let your movements coming out of Shavasana be integrative. As we gently, little bit by little bit, make our way to a closing seat. You're welcome to listen or to join me for closing Om. Om. Yoga is the tool to unwind the rut that life sticks us in. It does not create our life, but it erodes the old and puts us in position to create. Namaste.